we all know the story. It is one of the most enduring tropes in Western culture. A struggling blues musician goes down to the crossroads at midnight. A young, ambitious stockbroker wants to rule Wall Street. A fading celebrity wants one last shot at eternal youth. They meet a shadowy figure. They sign a contract, perhaps in blood, and instantly they have everything they ever wanted: talent, wealth, fame, power. But there is a catch, a terrible price to be paid at a later date. They have sold their soul to the devil. From the legend of Robert Johnson to the play Dr. Faustus, from the Little Mermaid to the Simpsons, the Faustian bargain is everywhere. It is our favorite metaphor for the price of ambition. But here is the theological problem. If you go to the Manual of Christian Theology, the Bible Land, look for the instructions on how to sell your soul, you won't find them. In fact, according to traditional Jewish and Christian theology, you cannot sell your soul. It is a metaphysical impossibility. Why? Because you don't own it. The soul, in biblical thought, belongs to God. You can't sell what you don't own. It would be like trying to sell a rental car to a pawnbroker. The transaction is void. So, if the Bible doesn't teach that you can make a deal with the devil, who did? How did a theological impossibility become the most famous plot device in history? Where did the idea of the contract written in blood come from? And how did this medieval legend migrate to the American South to birth the blues? Today, we are looking at the history of a transaction. We are examining the legal history of the afterlife to answer the question, can you actually sell your soul? To understand why the deal with the devil is a later invention, we have to look at the original biblical view of the soul and the devil. In the Bible, Satan is not a businessman. He is a tempter, a liar, and a destroyer. He wants you to sin, yes. But he doesn't have the authority to grant you superpowers in exchange for a title deed to your spirit. There is a famous verse in Matthew 16:26. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? We often read this as a transaction. I trade my soul for the world, but the Greek word used is zamith, which means to sustain damage, to lose, or to ruin. Jesus isn't talking about a trade. He is talking about neglect. If you spend all your time chasing money, you will ruin your life, your soul. It's a warning about priorities, not a contract law. In Ezekiel 18:4, God is explicit. Behold, all souls are mine. In the biblical worldview, your soul isn't a coin in your pocket. It is your life breath given by God. You can't trade it away because it ultimately returns to God. Satan can tempt you to ruin it, but he cannot buy it. So, if the Bible says no sale, where did the contract come from? The story of the Devil's Pact has a specific birth date. It emerged in the 6th century AD, in a Greek legend about a man named Theophilus of Ardena. Theophilus was an archdeacon, a church administrator in modern-day Turkey. The story goes that he was unfairly fired from his job by a new bishop. He was bitter, angry, and desperate to get his position back. So, he sought out a Jewish sorcerer who took him to a midnight meeting with Satan. Satan agreed to give Theophilus his job back. But on one condition: Theophilus had to sign a document renouncing Christ and the Virgin Mary. He signed it in his own blood. Theophilus got his job back, but he was racked with guilt. He fasted and prayed to the Virgin Mary for 40 days. Eventually, Mary appeared, descended into hell, beat up the devil, stole the contract back, and returned it to Theophilus. He burned the contract and died a saint. This story was a massive hit in the Middle Ages. It established the tropes we know today. 1. The desperate man. 2. The formal written contract. 3. The signature in blood. 4. The possibility of getting out of it through Mary. But notice, in this early version, the contract wasn't about selling the soul as an object. It was a feudal oath. It was about switching allegiance. It was treason. The idea shifted from treason to legal transaction during the witch trials of the 15th and 16th centuries. The inquisitors, like the authors of the Malleus Maleficarum, were obsessed with law. They began to view witchcraft not just as magic, but as a formal legal pact with the devil. They theorized that Satan was a master lawyer. He mimicked God's covenants. God has a covenant, a contract with his people. Therefore, Satan must have a counter-covenant with his witches. This is where the mythology gets dark. Confessions extracted under torture described the Black Book of Satan, where witches would sign their names. The devil's mark was seen as a seal on the contract. This changed the devil from a chaotic monster into a bureaucrat. He became a figure who was bound by rules. If you signed, he owned you. The law was on his side. But the selling your soul trope didn't become a pop culture icon until it met the Renaissance man. In the 16th century, a real historical German alchemist named Johann Georg Faust lived, bragged about his magic, and died in an explosion. After his death, Christopher Marlowe in England and later Johann Wolfgang von Goethe in Germany turned him into a literary legend. Dr. Faustus. This was a new kind of bargain. Faust didn't want his job back like Theophilus. He didn't want to be a witch. He wanted knowledge. He wanted experience. He wanted to know the secrets of the universe. In Marlowe's play, Faustus signs a contract for 24 years of absolute power and knowledge. He gets it. He travels the cosmos. But when the 24 years are up, he is dragged screaming to hell. Marlowe's message was, the price of secular knowledge is spiritual death. But Goethe's version, 1808, changed the ending. In Goethe's Faust, the deal is a bet. Mephistopheles, the demon, says he can make Faust so happy, so satisfied with a single moment, that Faust will say, "Linger a while, you are so fair." If Faust ever settles for a moment of pleasure, he loses. But Faust keeps striving. He never settles. And in the end, because he kept striving, God saves him. These two stories cemented the myth. They taught the West that the soul is a currency that can be traded for worldly greatness. This brings us to the most famous American version, The Bluesman at the Crossroads. The legend of Robert Johnson is iconic. A mediocre guitar player disappears for a few months, returns as a master of the Delta blues, records 29 songs that change music history, and dies at age 27. The rumor: he met the devil at the crossroads in Mississippi and made a trade. But this story is a fascinating case of syncretism mixing religions. In the American South, enslaved Africans blended Christian imagery with West African Yoruba religion. In Yoruba mythology, the deity Eshu, or Papa Legba in Vodou, is the god of the crossroads. He is not the devil. He is a trickster. He is the gatekeeper of communication. He teaches skills and opens doors. When African American musicians talked about going to the crossroads, they were likely originally referencing this African tradition of seeking skill from a spirit guardian. But white Christian observers heard crossroads and supernatural power and translated it through their own filter. That must be the devil. So, the Robert Johnson deal is a remix. It combines the African concept of the crossroads spirit with the European concept of the Faustian pact. It created the myth of rock and roll, that great talent, comes from a dark source. So, can you sell your soul? Theologically and biblically, no. Your soul belongs to God. Satan can't buy it, and you can't sell it. The contract is a literary fiction, but the idea persists because it speaks to a deep human fear. It reflects our anxiety about capitalism. We live in a world where everything is for sale. Our time, our labor, our data, our attention. The Faustian bargain is the ultimate capitalist nightmare. It imagines that even our essential self, our soul, is just another asset, another commodity that can be leveraged for a short-term gain. This brings us to the final debate. On one side, the warning view, is the story of selling your soul a vital moral warning? Even if it's not literally possible, is it metaphorically true? Do people sell their souls every day, trading their integrity for money, their family for fame, their conscience for power? Does the myth help us visualize the very real spiritual cost of ambition? On the other side, the theological error view, or is the myth a dangerous lie? Does it give the devil too much credit? By imagining Satan as a businessman who keeps his promises for a price, do we make him too rational, too powerful? Does the myth distract us from the biblical reality that evil isn't a transaction, but a corruption? Does it make us think we are owners of a soul that actually belongs to our Creator? Are we owners of our souls or stewards? Let me know your thoughts on this legendary deal in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the history of the ultimate transaction fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the real stories behind our beliefs. Thanks for watching.